A few videos ago, we had a look at building a PC for the price of an Xbox 360. And now on screen, you'll see me, poorly, to be fair, attempting to unbox the key component for upgrading that system. So maybe we can try and compete with an Xbox One. I mean, it's about an extra 40 quid in budget, 35, 40 quid, because the Xbox Ones can now be had on eBay for about, £60, £65. So we've got a pretty good bit of leeway there for an upgrade. Anyway, roll the title. As I mentioned in the last video, we built that PC for the price of an Xbox 360, so 25 quid, same. Now today, we're going to be looking at upgrading that, giving ourselves around £35 to play with, to put us up to a £60 budget. And that also would, if we sold the GTX 560 Ti, that'd put us at about £48, say, to spend. So I went out and I got an R9 280, 3GB, an i7 3770, and an extra 8GB of RAM. Stuffed it in, and then, well, let's see how it does in the benchmark bit. Yay. So, the benchmarks. First up here, we're going to have a Kerbal Space Program. As you may have remembered, it performed relatively alright on the previous incarnation of this build, but it was running at 1080p, low settings, and had quite a low frame rate. Well, here, we've gone up 1080p high with the full res textures, and we saw an average of 57 frames per second, with 1% lows of 13 FPS. Now, even though we've gone from 1GB to 3GB of VRAM here, Kerbal Space Program was still basically using all of our VRAM allocation. So we were still a bit bottlenecked there. While the frame rate was pretty consistent, at some points there were massive stutters when playing. Now, obviously for KSP this isn't that important, but it can get a bit annoying. Playable, but still, again, a card with 4GB of VRAM might be able to manage, or knocking down the full res textures to half res, but I just kind of wanted to see what this build could do. Next up, we've got another game we tested last time, Tomb Raider 2013, running at 1080p, high settings. Now here we saw an average of 146 frames per second, with 1% lows of 103 FPS. We might have a slightly overkill build for running this game at 1080p. It was immaculate. We ran through the little cave scene we did in the Xbox 360 build, and also we ran through the benchmark, and it was substantially better performance-wise here. Obviously, in the last build, we actually had pretty good performance in this game, arguably the standout, but here it absolutely smashed it out of the park. It looked better. We had bumped up the graphics preset. Same resolution, even though it kind of just generally looked higher res than the previous GTX 560 Ti. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah. Amazing performance here. It is an older game, so it's kind of expected, but really good. I can't lie, the original plan for this build was to desperately try and cling on to that i3 3220 so we could ram a massively upgraded graphics card in here and see what the performance would be like. Now, I picked up a GTX 1060 6GB on eBay. It was in appalling condition, but that was £38. Now, my idea was to just shove that in here, go with the upgrade, and that'd be that. However, it bottlenecked the R9 280 massively, the old i3. So I think with the GTX 1060, we might be pushing it there. I mean, that's going to be another video. I'm going to do a clean up and a hopefully maybe fix. I'm not actually sure if it works on that 1060. But here, I think we've upgraded so that we've got a really well-rounded PC. I mean, that i7 is going to be good for another graphics card upgrade, probably, given the CPU utilization in most of these games. Now, here just to prove that point, we've got Skyrim running. Now, while the frames per second were better than they were before, again, this is 1080p high, we're seeing, well, 100% CPU utilization permanently in the game, no matter where you go. The graphics card's being held back, so obviously there was no point going up to anything higher than the R9 280 anyway for that CPU. So I thought, why not make the build a bit more well-rounded rather than just having it like completely centered on gaming. Anyway, let's carry on to the actual Skyrim benchmark here, where we saw an average frame rate of 58 FPS with 1% lows of 40. Now, again, 1080p high settings here with a mixture of different places on the map. And yeah, really quite good performance. It again, uplift over the, quote, Xbox 360 price build. But yeah, very playable. I know, again, it's an older game. The anniversary edition, not anniversary edition, sorry, special edition. I've made that mistake in the last video too. Here, ran really well. To be fair, probably about it's a game from the era of this hardware anyway. Is the old special edition refresh? So I guess, yeah, good performance. Really quite solid performance. At this point, I was kind of thinking, well, how far can we go here? I didn't really know how to test this, to be honest, because obviously I can go and run like a stupidly modern game on it, and it probably will get like 15 frames per second at 1080p. But I don't think that's really the point in a build like this. So with the like 90 gigabytes of hard drive space I had left, I downloaded Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which you're going to see in a second, and then BeamNG, just to see a couple of more popular games on Steam, a more modern game running a lot better graphics than anything else we've tested here in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and then BeamNG, which is always quite a popular game on Steam. So, while we're waiting for Shadow of the Tomb Raider to load, I thought I'd give you a little breakdown on the prices of each component. So we saw the i7 3770 costing about £30 at CEX, £8 for 8GB of DDR3, kind of a sad world to be honest, because that used to be about £3, £4 from CEX. And obviously the R9 280, as you can see, was £15. Now, obviously you can go out and get these parts for cheaper on eBay quite easily, but for the sake of getting them in relatively quickly, I thought I'd just go and grab them off CEX. So considering I could get about probably £9, I think, for the 560 Ti on eBay, we got a pretty good price overall of about £44 for this build. Anyway, now for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I've just left in a clip here of me being quite surprised of it actually running, so enjoy my surprise. Oh, how's this? It's actually running. And nicely. Well, ish. Huh. I'll be damned. Moving on from my slight jubilation there, we saw Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p with FSR enabled, running at medium with an average of 38 frames per second. Now, as you might have heard, I was a bit surprised this launched, but to be honest, it kind of makes sense. We've got pretty good hardware here. We've got 3GB of VRAM, which is sufficient. Yeah, okay, it's not amazing, and for most games in 2026, it's going to struggle quite a lot. But here, on an older title, a really quite well-optimized older title, we saw, like, genuinely playable performance. I literally wouldn't mind playing the game like this. It's probably about akin to what you'd expect on the Xbox One with this game. Probably a tiny bit better, maybe. So yeah, all in, pretty solid. For the last game today, I thought I'd pick a bit of a wild card in BeamNG. So at 1080p normal settings, it ran at 42 frames per second with 1% lows of 28 FPS. Now I thought I'd do a bit of a denser map here, give it a bit more of a benchmark, stress the system a bit more, and it ran pretty well. A couple of little stutters here and there as things were loading in, and it did take its time loading in, but overall it ran, and that what more can you ask? I mean, £60 probably-ish for this PC, and it ran BeamNG quite flawlessly at 1080p. Again, can't really ask for that much more here, to be honest. Now, next up we have the benchmarks. Yay, like the synthetic ones, not the game ones. Anyway, so if we ran Time Spy here on the PC twice, once with the i3 3220 and one with our new i7 3770. We saw a bump in 2,000 points here to the CPU score, and overall, this graphics card, in Time Spy anyway, has about a third the performance of an RTX 3050, just to give some context, a bit more context hopefully, to where we're at. So next, I also ran Firestrike here, just to complete our little test that we did last time, and in Firestrike, we got a score of, a graphics score that is, we're only looking at graphics scores here, of 8,341. Now that put us at about 2.5 times that of the GTX 560 Ti, and about half that of an RTX 3050, as you'll see on the chart that I've got here. Now, pretty decent performance actually. This is quite a good uplift given that, again, we basically only spent a £5 more on our graphics card, which is kind of ironic. I mean, that GTX 560 Ti really was not a very good choice in the original video. but we were kind of limited for the budget. Cinebench here was a pretty straightforward one. We got quite literally double the performance of what we got last time. So yeah, I mean, we've doubled the core count, doubled the threads, it's expected. Now, just to wrap up this video here, I think if I was going to redo this whole thing, getting the R9 280 originally would have been the best shout, to be honest. Rather than faffing around with the GTX 560 Ti, a graphics card that was only £5 less expensive. So that GTX 560 Ti was £10, the R9 280, £15. Difference, it's not very big, and we get way more performance out of this. So I think if we go back, get the R9 280 straight off the bat, and yes, suck up the extra £5 budget. And then we would have actually, just upgrading the CPU would have done wonders for the performance on top of that, given the CPU bottleneck we've seen with the i3-3220 and the R9 280. Now, I'm just going to wrap up the video now, I think. We've basically reached the end. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope this has been a bit of a fun one today to just get some perception of how, like, you can get pretty good PCs, to be honest, for significantly under £100. And yeah, it's been nice. Anyway, see you in the next one. And please do consider subscribing and dropping the video a like if you're into that. If not, it's chill. Anyway, see you around.